This is a story about a Skinwalker encounter. So for context, I live in West Virginia, and in particular, I live in a rather secluded part of the state, so I'm surrounded by trees and such. I have lived here all my life, and I have heard many stories about Mothman and other cryptids like Skinwalkers and Wendigos, and with me being one of the oldest of my siblings, I simply dismissed these folk tales, but I would soon be wrong because in these following days, I would be terrified, fearing for my life, and stalked by this supernatural creature. I am 17 and was home alone for a good bit of my summer vacation. As it was getting late, I had to go and turn off all my lights in the farmhouse. And as I was doing this, I happened to look out the window into the tree line. I saw what looked like a pair of glowing eyes. So I took off my glasses, rubbed my eyes, and checked again. It seems that I was seeing things, but little did I know, I indeed was not. And this thing would soon be the bane of my existence. The following morning, I woke up and proceeded as I normally do, like checking the barn, the cattle, the horses and whatnot, but to my surprise, a few of the cows were missing. I simply told myself that I must have miscounted the previous day, but I noticed something strange when I was making my rounds. Some of the fencing was broken down near the cows. I saw tracks leading in and out of the cow pen, and these tracks did not belong to any animal I was familiar with. And I know what tracks belong to what type of animals. So I simply thought it was a mix of tracks like cows, coyotes and wolves, but out of curiosity I followed the tracks as best I could, leading me deep into the woods, about maybe 5 ft from the fencing. And as I was in those woods, I couldn't help but feel like something was watching me and my every move. I looked around but saw nothing but trees. So I thought that I was just tired from not getting enough sleep last night. I then proceeded to walk back to the farm and put up some temporary fencing like chicken wire so that later I could come back when the rest of my family was home. Later that night, I decided to go on a walk because I needed to clear my mind, as I just had a rough argument with my girlfriend. So I took out my phone and headphones and listened to my music as I walked in the forest. But as it got darker, I realized I was so deep into the woods I couldn't see anything, or even recognize where I was. So I took my phone out and used the flashlight to guide my way back. As I was making my way back to the farmhouse, I thought my flashlight caught something in the trees, something like what I had seen the night before. But then before I could get a closer look, it disappeared just as fast as they appeared. Even though I'm 17, I was still freaked out, so I picked up the pace. I tried to hurry out of there as fast as I could as I was doing, so I was taken by surprise when I heard a loud howling noise over my music. So I paused my music and took out my headphones, and there was again the same howl, but not a normal howl like from a wolf or coyote. This was more deep and scratchy, like if you were trying to yell with a sore throat. And it made me stop in my tracks, freezing for a few seconds. I could feel my heart in my throat as I slowly looked around, trying to see what could have made that noise. I saw nothing but trees. Then when I was looking with my flashlight, but I realized that it was quiet, eerily quiet. And what broke that silence was a twig snapping, not even 10 feet from me. And it was at that point my fight or flight response kicked in. And I chose flight. I then proceeded to run as fast as I could, given that I wasn't the most athletic, but I had to try because I was truly scared at that moment and was fearing for my own life. After running for what felt like hours, I could finally see where the forest ended and saw the farmhouse lit up from the lights I have yet to turn off. As I exited the forest and hopped over the fence for reasons I still don't understand, I looked over my shoulder to see if anything was following me, and to my horror, I saw a pair of dark glowing eyes higher than any normal human height, and me being relatively tall, it freaked me out. I stumbled backwards and tripped over myself while keeping eye contact with this creature. He didn't come any closer because he stopped at the tree line, but I could smell him, and it was putrid and vile, like a rotting corpse mixed with eggs you left in the sun. I know that I wasn't the only one who saw and smelled this tall, dark, human-like figure. The cows were going crazy, but I eventually got them to calm down, and I went back to the farmhouse and turned off all the lights and then walked out onto the porch. I took out my binoculars and looked to the tree line one last time to see if what I saw was real or if I was just tired and hallucinating. But there he was looking at me with those glowing dark eyes. My heart went into my throat and I stumbled backwards, slamming the door and locking it. I ran up to my room and took the shotgun out of my closet, loaded it and kept it under my bed for peace of mind and tried to sleep. But it was hard because every time I closed my eyes, his eyes appeared. Eventually I fell asleep because I woke up the next morning to the roosters and my alarm. So I did my normal routine, but this time I took my shotgun with me just in case. And as I got to the broken down part of the fence, I saw that the wire I had put up previous was also torn, and that blood was on it and the ground probably from a cow it took. I say it because I do not know what I saw last night, but soon I will come face to face with it. I walked into the tree line maybe 10 feet and yelled out, "I do not fear you. You cannot hurt me," in a firm voice, and in response, it let out this blood-curdling howl-like screech, and I yelled back as I proceeded to run out of the woods and back to the farm, not looking back this time. This was my biggest mistake, however, because come night time shit hit the fan. Come night time, I locked almost every door and window I can think of and hide in my room with my shotgun. And for 10 minutes, it was silent until I looked out towards the tree line to try and see it. But it was closer, maybe 30 or 40 feet from the farmhouse, and I knew it had seen me because I locked eyes with it and I quickly ducked down. Then I got back up. It was closer this time, maybe 10 or 20 FT, and I opened the window yelling at it, showing that I was not scared of it, but it just stood there looking at me. I then proceeded to close the window locket and pull the curtains over it as to not give it any attention. And what felt like hours passed, but soon after I heard banging at the front door, and what seemed like all around me, as well as inhuman screaming and screeching, until I heard all the windows downstairs simultaneously shatter. And at that moment I thought to myself, this is how I die. What happened next still feels like a dream, but from what I can remember, I heard animal-like noises coming from downstairs. I vividly remember the blood-curdling, howling and screeching it made then. I heard hooves coming upstairs fast, and I was genuinely fearing for my life at the moment as it got closer. I could smell it again, that putrid and vile smell like rotting flesh and eggs that were left in the sun, and it was so strong that it made me almost throw up. I had to cover my mouth to not puke and to conceal my breathing, but they didn't matter because it had my scent and found the room I was in. It was at that moment it banged against the door and I ran to the door, dropping my shotgun in the process of trying to hold it shut. And it kept banging and scratching and screaming. I held it with all my strength until I looked ever so slightly to my left at my dresser. I thought to myself, I need to get this in front of my door. And with all my strength I pushed it in front of the door, which bought me some time. But God knows it wasn't enough. Even with the dresser on its side against the door, it kept on banging and banging. As my mind and heart were racing, I considered my options. I could jump out of the third-story window to my death, or I could go down with a fight. And that's exactly what I did. I waited in that room until it burst through that door, howling and screeching, and I aimed my gun at its ugly, wretched face. That I can only describe it as a half-human and half-deer skull with the skin on it and antlers, about 3 feet in length, and pulled the trigger without hesitation, and racked another shell and pulled the trigger. I reloaded my shotgun and fired off another 2 shells as it howled and screamed so loud that my ears hurt, and I thought they were going to bleed and burst, but I kept on shooting until it eventually backed off, and I could hear it running down the stairs, howling in pain and leaving a blood trail. I followed it through the hole it made in my door, chasing and shooting it with my pistol I had in the back of my jeans, and kept shooting and shooting. I chased it into the tree line, and that's where I stopped as I yelled at it, showing that I did not fear it, and that I was more powerful. As I walked back to the farmhouse, I heard it let out a howl, but not of anger or rage, but more of defeat. It started to rain as I went onto my porch, and to my surprise, Nothing was broken in my house except my door, which had a big hole in the middle. When my parents got home the next day, I simply told them that I was the one who caused the hole in my door because I was in a fit of rage, and they believed it. Even if I got yelled at, I know that I kept my family safe from whatever that creature was. That was 2 years ago, and while I was still living on the farm. I have since moved out, and now I am attending college. I keep in touch with my family, asking if they have seen any unknown tracks, or if they have heard any strange noises. To this day, I still wonder if it's out there waiting until I return to the farm so it can get its revenge for what I did those years ago. Thank you for listening, guys. Till next time.